Ever since that last night drive, I'd been cautious about taking the wheel after midnight. I'd seen things I couldn't explain, but trucking was my livelihood, and I couldn't afford to quit. One night I found myself hauling electronics from Phoenix to Denver. The moon was hidden behind a thick layer of clouds, leaving the highway dimly lit. The dashboard clock read 3:07 a.m. I swallowed hard, a shudder of apprehension passing through me. Despite my fears, I kept driving. It was then I noticed the truck behaving oddly. The radio suddenly crackled to life, filling the cabin with static. The dashboard lights flickered, casting ghostly shadows. And then, the entire rig started to shudder, as if caught in some invisible force. Just as I was about to pull over, the GPS chimed in with a new route. A shortcut, it said. Figuring that it might be faster and get me out of this situation, I decided to follow it. The new route led me off the highway and onto a deserted back road. It was dark, eerily silent. The tall trees on either side made it seem as if I was driving into the mouth of a beast. As I delved deeper, my headlights illuminated something on the road. An old lady, hunched and frail, was standing dead center in my path. I hit the brakes, the 18-wheeler coming to a screeching halt just a few feet away from her. Cautiously, I stepped out of the truck. "Ma'am, are you all right?" I asked, approaching her slowly. She turned towards me, her face hidden under the shadow of a tattered hood. "I need to get across," she whispered, her voice trembling. Despite the eeriness of the situation, I couldn't leave her there. I offered her a ride and she climbed into the passenger seat without a word. The truck's cab was filled with the scent of decay, like the damp autumn leaves. As we continued, the surroundings grew more ominous. I noticed the trees seemed twisted, their shadows appearing like grotesque faces in the dim light. The road ahead looked endless, swallowed by darkness. Suddenly the old woman pointed ahead, her bony finger trembling. "Stop here," she croaked. Before us stood an old, decrepit mansion, its silhouette menacing against the dark sky. Without a word, she stepped out of the truck and shuffled towards the mansion. As she did, she turned back to look at me. Her face, visible now, was horrifyingly aged, a network of wrinkles with 2 dark holes where her eyes should be. My heart pounded in my chest as she vanished into the mansion. I sat there in the truck, the silence deafening before the sound of the GPS chimed, snapping me back to reality. I looked down at the screen. It showed that I was back on the highway. Confused, I looked up to find the mansion, the twisted trees, the old woman, all gone. I was back on the familiar I-40 as if I had never left. As I continued my journey, I couldn't shake the eerie feeling. Each time I glanced at the clock, it read 3:07 a.m., and the scent of damp autumn leaves lingered in the cab. Upon reaching Denver, I delivered the load and decided to catch some sleep. However, as I drifted off, I saw the old woman's face in my mind. Those dark, hollow eyes staring at me, a silent plea echoing in them. Just like the hitchhiker from before, the old woman left a mark on me, an embodiment of the haunted highways and roads less traveled that I, as a trucker, seemed to be unwittingly drawn towards. In the weeks following that encounter, I found myself wrestling with an inescapable fear. Each time I passed an old mansion or an elderly woman on the street, I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck rise. The sight of twisted trees against a night sky would send chills down my spine. I could still smell the musty scent of autumn leaves within my cab. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was just another hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But the uncanny feelings never left. They clung to me, a ghostly residue that refused to fade away. The job took me all over the country, but no matter how far I traveled, I could not escape the echoes of my past experiences. Every back road reminded me of the route that led me to the old woman, every night sky reminiscent of that ghastly mansion. Eventually, I found myself back on the same route from Phoenix to Denver. I checked the clock, 3:07 a.m. A sense of déjà vu swept over me, the same route, the same cargo, the same chilling hour. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life again. The dashboard lights flickered and a familiar voice from the GPS announced a new shortcut, the same one from that haunting night. I gulped, my palms sweaty against the wheel. But this time, I didn't take the suggested route. Instead, I continued straight, on the familiar highway, away from the haunting memory. Despite the radio and the lights going haywire, I kept going, my heart pounding in my chest. As I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw the highway disappearing into the same eerie void that I'd seen before. But I did not stop. I could not stop. Just then the radio ceased its static noise and a song began to play, an old, haunting melody that seemed almost familiar. The voice of the singer was trembling, much like the old woman's. The dashboard clock still read 3:07 a.m. I took a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill my lungs. I had survived 2 unexplainable experiences already. I could survive this one as well. After all, some roads are haunted and some rides never truly end.